Today's topic on this webinar is coping with loss during the pandemic. So during this pandemic, when we talk about the pandemic, of course, we're talking about this guy. So do you know what this guy is? If you do, can you put down in the chat what you see? Just to see if people here are able to use the chat function. Someone think maybe it's the brain? And some people think it's COVID. Right, so this is the virus, right? So this is the COVID-19 virus that we're talking about. So when you see it, it certainly can bring different kinds of emotions, right? So, I wonder if now I can invite you to put down the kind of emotions that you have when you are looking at this picture of the virus. Would you be able to put your emotions down in the chat? Annoyed, yes. Anything else? So we got one person who's annoyed by the virus. How about the rest of the people? Okay. So some people would say it's scary. And yeah, so it seems like that one of the emotions that this evokes certainly is fear, right? And worrying how long it will take. So worries and fear. Someone's also curious. And someone's also fearsome. Okay, so thank you. So when we see, or when we see this virus, in other words, when we talk about the pandemic, it can bring up all kinds of different emotions, depending on what your experience of the pandemic has been. And so what I see from the chat predominantly is one of anxiety and worry about the future, and wondering how long we can get over the pandemic. So definitely the pandemic then has an impact on us. And so when we talk about the impact on the pandemic, one way we can reflect on is the idea or the concept or the experience of loss, right? So just like when you see here a jigsaw puzzle, there may be a piece missing, right? So let's then talk about what is missing. What is causing us to have an emotional reaction? Because certainly one of the things that can cause us emotional reaction is having lost something. So if you reflect on your own experience of the pandemic, what have you lost? What things have you experienced as a loss? Can you type in the chat? What did you lose during the pandemic? Freedom, a sense of security, social disconnection, job, time, social life. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. That's very helpful. So if you then look at the experiences that you're sharing, there's some stuff that people have shared about a loss that is quite concrete, like money, having a job, having a place to live. And there are some that are, because of the loss of these things, then you lose that aspects of life, like feel a sense of security, a sense of freedom, a sense of connection, a sense of uh, um, social connection, because you lose a social life. So notice that when people put in the chat, there's something that changes with the day-to-day activities that we can do, and resources and materials we have. So those are concrete things that occur to us. And because of that, what we're coping with when we have a loss during the pandemic is both the things that we have lost and also the kind of meaning the loss has to us. So if we lose a job, if we don't have a place to live, that's practical problems for our survival. It threatens our own survival, right? When there's a virus out there and we are afraid of getting sick, there's a real danger there. So all of that undermines our sense of being secure. And then when we actually have lost activities, because there used to be many programs at Hong Fook that's in person, for example, or you go to many community functions, or you go play cards or Tai Chi or activities with your friends, those activities have stopped. So because of those changes, there's a loss of sense of social connections. So when we're coping with loss, uh, um, uh, sometimes we need material resources to help us again. So through connection with Hong Fook and Hong Fook workers, you may be able to help get physical needs met, like housing needs or financial needs. And at the same time, what is also helpful is to look at what have we lost psychologically, emotionally, and what it means to us when we have lost these activities or materials, because losing a sense of security, freedom, and connections that you have listed can be very impactful on our lives. And that's what we will also talk about today. So when we have a sense of loss, it's good to use problem-solving skills to see who can help you, what can help you, and contacting Hong Fook can get some of those needs met. And at the same time, we can also start thinking about the psychological, emotional impact of these losses. So here, this is a brief video clip. So let's watch it together and see how you feel. And let me know what you see. Okay. So what are you seeing on screen, and yeah, how do you feel? Are you able to see that? It's a video clip. I don't know if it's moving. Is it moving for you guys? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So you see a flickering candle that got extinguished, and kind of the delicate life, right? Anything else? Anybody would like to type in the chat how you feel? Okay, losing hope. Struggling to survive, but give up. I symbolize an end. Yeah. So thank you for that. Loss of light and energy. So I think thank you for sharing. That's very good observation. So if we put this together, right, and if we look at the chat, you're very sharp in describing it. So first you have physically, as someone pointed out, a candle that's being extinguished. And then what does that mean? Well, there's a loss here. Someone had pointed out, well, there's loss of light and energy when the candle goes out. And then when we see that, that's the third step. Like you look at something, right? An event has occurred, just like the pandemic has occurred. That has led to a loss. In this case, a loss of light, a loss of energy when the candle goes out. And then the third question is that we're discussing today is, what does it mean to you? And how does it make you feel? And so from what we can see is that it can cause the meaning of that life is delicate. Some people are put down, and it means the end. It symbolizes an end for someone. And emotionally, how does it feel? Well, it feels like we're losing hope. So notice that when an event has occurred, it's helpful to first look at and figure out, oh, what is going on here? What did I lose? Well, here, light and energy of this one candle, right? And then we look at what's the impact of this on us. And from your sharing, something like this, when you see this, it gives you a sense of, wow, this is like the end, giving up hope, trying to survive, but now it's giving up hope and it's the end. So notice that when we have a loss, it can mean something to us, and in some cases, it can bring us the loss can bring us and make us feel hopeless, and can make us feel a sense of doom that the end is coming. And of course, it is true too that with the pandemic, there are people who have died from the pandemic, and this will be another kind of loss, a specific kind of loss, a loss of human life. So you may even know of someone who've died during the pandemic, and so that would be a particular kind of a loss of someone close to you. And we need to identify and acknowledge that too, because during this period of time, I know of people who have lost jobs, as you've talked about, or time, or freedom, social connection. And then finally, there are people who have lost people who are dear to them, either in Toronto or back home in the country that you came from, and some of you had come from if you were not born in Canada. So all of these are different types of losses, and it is helpful for, especially for grief, when we talk about loss of human life, to look at how we understand it. And so this is one model, for instance, to understand the loss of someone close to you, if someone have died. But these concepts can also in some way apply to other types of losses too. So just let me explain this a little bit. So this is one of the more famous models of understanding what happens when someone close to you have died, that kind of loss. And it was kind of hypothesized that we go through different stages. There's a stage of denial, where it's kind of just hard to believe. It's like a shock. It's hard to believe this person has left. And then some people would go through a stage of anger, like, why does this have to happen? It's not fair. Sometimes we go through bargaining. Bargaining meaning like, oh, if only he can or she can come back to life, I would be, I would pray more, I would be a better person. You're kind of hoping to reverse it by offering something else. If I pray hard enough, maybe the person I miss would talk to me in my dreams, right? And then it may go through a period of depression, like giving up all hope and feeling very sad during the grief period. And then towards the bottom, it may come to a sense of acceptance that, okay, I can come to accept that this person whom I care about has left. And so that can be the final stage of acceptance. So this model helps us understand one key thing, which is when we experience a loss and such as someone we love, we have many different mixed emotions. Do you remember the picture I just showed? When we encounter something like that, we'll have a whole host of different emotions. Now, what people have found out is that these are not exactly concrete stages. So people don't necessarily have to go through all of them. And it also doesn't mean one direction only. Sometimes you feel anger first, and then you feel sad, and then you get to acceptance, and then you can jump back to anger again, and then you go to depress again, and then you go to denial, and then you go to acceptance. So that journey of grief can go back and forth. And this is helpful to understand. So when we lose something, we have a mixture of emotions, and we can go through different kinds of reactions. And it's not necessarily step by step. And this also applies during the pandemic. Even if you lose that social connection, some people in the beginning would deny it and say, well, it doesn't matter to me. I never used to go out that much anyway, so it's not a big impact on me. But after 6 months, they might find, oh, I don't know why, but I'm just sad. I used to go out and do Tai Chi in the park. I didn't think that was a big deal. I'm so sad. And then maybe next week they will feel anger. Like, why? This is not fair. How come it happens to us? Or why are people not listening? And why is the pandemic not over yet? Right? So people can, and you might experience many of these emotions in different cycles, and that's perfectly part of normal in being a reaction to a loss. And yeah, so what does this picture mean to you when we talk about loss? When you see this picture, what does this picture have to do with loss? Can you type in the chat? What do you see here? Okay. Thank you. Some people put down that you see a loss of time and the time is not reversible. So I think that, thank you. If there's anything else, please feel free to put in the chat. So certainly, if we look at the sense of time that is kind of dribbling, we may get impatient, right? Because now it's been how long now? It's been over a year here in the pandemic. And people can feel frustrated about a sense of loss of time, precious time. And as people point out, time seems irreversible. So it makes us, as the pandemic goes on, it can make us frustrated. And the loss is timeless, some people say. So in other words, some of the things that we have lost, we feel like, oh, we can never get that back because of the irreversibility, right? So if I miss my 18th birthday last month and I didn't have a big event, I can't go back to my 18th birthday again, right? So people feel that sense of forever loss, right? So this kind of irreversible loss can make it seem harder. And also, as the struggle continues, it also makes us feel impatient. So the factor of time can play into this. And here, yeah, when you look at this, what do you see and how do you feel? If I show you this, if I give everyone this, complimentary of Hong Fuk today, everyone gets one. Okay, so now this is a message for Hong Fuk management. We know what can bring people happiness, joy, and pleasure, and delight, and lovely, if with a little bit of guilt. So, so just notice what has just happened. I show one picture, and people feel a certain way. I just show another picture. You feel a different way. Again, when you see a picture, it means something to you. You can kind of taste it, right? And if I promise that because you watch this webinar through Hong Fuk will send you this, all of you will feel very delighted, pleasure, and happy, and joy. Isn't that wonderful? So I think, first of all, that even when we are experience loss and unhappiness, we can find that sense of pleasure again, right? Things can give us a sense of pleasure again. It is kind of possible. All it takes is maybe Hong Fuk to deliver this to you. And sometimes just by looking at the picture, maybe you feel guilty eating it, someone said, but there's a sense of sweetness. So in other words, even when we're at a loss, even though we can't go back in time to retrieve in the past, we can move forward with ice cream or whatever you like to eat. If it's not ice cream, it can be something else you eat. And of course, in some ways, this ice cream is not very different from the candle. I mean, wouldn't it also melt if you don't eat it? So the ice cream is not going to last forever. But when you have it in your hand and you put it in your mouth and you really taste it, yeah, what do you think this tastes like looking at the picture? Can you imagine what it tastes like in your mouth? What would it taste like? Yeah, sweet. Yes, sweetness. So we can all imagine the sweetness in our mouth when we put ice cream here. So I think the first lesson of the day and delicious is when we are at a loss, sometimes people eat ice cream. Why? Because it can bring yummy, delicious sweetness back, isn't it? And when we see someone who have experienced loss, right, we can give someone that vanilla, yummy, sweet ice cream. And so that's why Hong Fuk, many programs have food, right? The cooking program. So what does that mean? That we experience lots of losses in life, and there are things that can comfort us. And even though ice cream doesn't last a very long time, maybe it will melt before you eat it quickly. But when you're eating it, it can bring you that vanilla, yummy, delicious sweetness. And when someone else has experienced loss, we can also comfort that person by giving that person ice cream. Or, in other words, there are things that we can give to help people experience sweetness again. And so this is what we're talking about today, is that the life of ups and downs, left and right, twists and turns, that people experience many different things, and we experience many different things in this road. And so our life can seem to twist and turn, and sometimes we encounter very difficult paths, but we can always move forward in this path. So just because, time is not reversible, it doesn't mean we cannot encounter a new sweetness every day. So imagine that you're that little car, or you're walking along this path. Sometimes you may feel lost. Sometimes you feel like you're going backwards. Sometimes it feels, it's so hard to go uphill. But every step along the way, it can be a new step forward. And we can also find sweetness along each step too. And so, even though, just like here in this picture, maybe one candle is extinguished, is gone. But if we look around in life, there can be other candles that we see. And so I think this is an important message, because in the beginning, people say, wow, that candle's gone. It's kind of hopeless. It's kind of giving up hope. And it's kind of gone forever. Well, even if that candle is gone forever, there are other candles around in our lives. There are other ice cream around. There is other hope. So the hope around us can come from other things that brings us joy and meaning. It can also come from even other people, right? Even if you have lost one person dear to you, there are so many other people around that can be your light. And it's also true that you see that candle that's unlit. Who knows what the future is? Maybe someone will light it. Maybe one of these candles will light it too, right? We're not going backwards. We are not getting back wax that's gone, but even that candle can be relit from some of the other candles. So as the pandemic gets better, there can be always change and new hope for other kinds of connection happening. And so when we are coping with loss, sometimes whatever we have lost, what we focus on is only the one big loss, that blue ball, right? That weighs heavy on our minds. Okay, we've lost this thing. And so we do need to identify it, know what it is, name it, grieve it, process those emotions. Sometimes cry about people with loss. Sometimes knowing that, oh, I did lose a job and that's very sad and that makes us feel bad. Or we lose that social connection. It's good to acknowledge it and process it. And yet we also need to balance it with the right-hand side, just like that last picture with lots of candles. Well, there are other things that can help me move forward. There's that ice cream Hong Fok promised us, right? There is sweetness. There are people who are helping you and talking to you. So don't forget those many other white balls that help balance things out. Sometimes we want to grieve emotionally, and other times we also want to build hope and look for things that we can do that brings us joy. Because sometimes, for example, if you've lost someone that's dear to you, some patients or clients would say to me, well, I kind of feel guilty. I shouldn't even feel happy. Like so and so is suffering and so is sick and so is dying. And so I feel guilty. I shouldn't even feel happy. And yet life needs to have that balance, right? So whatever we've lost, whatever we've experienced, it's about also looking at what is there that can help us. and move forward. And there are practical things we can do to help us move forward. And so when we are putting these rocks one on top of another, um, not only are we focusing on some other things that are going to help us feel better, we are achieving a sense of peace and balance in doing that. And so this picture of these rocks stacking up can mean many different things. And one of those things that can teach us is this sense of balance and this idea of what we call mindfulness. I don't know if you've heard of mindfulness, but what does mindfulness mean to you when you hear mindfulness? When people say, okay, you got to be more mindful. Have people heard of mindfulness? Mindfulness. Well, one kind of mindfulness is a caring type of mindfulness. Okay. I think that's true because at the heart of mindfulness, there's a sense of caring and connection. So mindfulness, as we often talk about it now, that can kind of help us cope with stress and loss. It includes several components. It does include this component of, as someone has put in the chat, being in the present. What is in the present means? It does mean like not looking backwards, because we talk about loss being, oh, irreversible. We can't go back in time. So because of that, the more we go back in time and try to go back in time, we actually forget to focus and bring ourselves to this current present moment here and right now. So someone put down letting go. So what are we really letting go is we're really letting go of kind of the past. And so when we have some sadness and anger and depression about the past, yes, those things can come up. And those things can also go if we let them go and don't try not to hang on to it, right? So that they come and go, kind of like the waves in the background. And then we can focus on the present, one step at a time, what's here right now in front of us. If we keep on looking at the past, we may forget to enjoy the ice cream that's in the present. And then what will happen is the ice cream will melt and then you will lose that too. So because time doesn't go backwards, it actually is helpful to focus on the present and enjoy the sweetness that's also here that we may not see. So mindfulness is a practice then of just reminding ourselves what's here in this present moment, here and now, what's in front of me, who is still good to me, who talks nicely to me, what do I have to eat today? So things that's happening today, so that we don't take it for granted and really taste what is here in the present. And when we start to remember the past, which is only natural, we also let it go too. And when we worry about the future, just like in the chat, someone worries the future, like, oh, when is this going to end? What's going to happen tomorrow? We can also let that go. And we can bring ourselves back to the present. Even though thinking about the past and worrying about the future is quite normal. It's okay. It's just part of being human. And we are practicing letting it go. So talking about mindfulness, let's just see another video clip together and practice mindfulness with this clip. So see if you can mindfully, meaning like in the present moment, just notice moment by moment what you see in this next video clip. Okay, so what do you see in this video clip? There's beauty in something that's disturbed. I think we're talking about the water surface, right? It's kind of, there's disturbance, but wow, it's so beautiful. Anything else that you notice? That's good. And then time will even out that disturbance. Each movement invokes a different type of emotion. Yeah, great. So I think that, yeah, keep typing whatever you think you see and how it makes you feel. And how does it make you feel? What emotions? Someone says beautiful. Anything else? It seems to me that the ice cream evokes more emotions than water, but okay. so I think what people are noticing is just like what we described, when an event occurs, it can cause a kind of a ripple effect, right? So a single drop of water, there's kind of a ripple out. So that's what people saw, that there's this disturbance. It can kind of cause many things to happen. So of course, if you imagine that each drop of water is like an event in your life, right? Yes, it can have many different potential impact. And as people point out, we can also find beauty in this impact too, right? So it's not all bad. It doesn't have to be all bad. It can be good, right? And so some people said if there was sound included, it could be quite pleasing to the ears. You can imagine if it's like blop, blop, blop. You can imagine that maybe with the sound that is, missing, maybe it will also feel better. So people are yearning for what also isn't there. So notice, what if every day it's kind of like that's what mindfulness is about. It's helping us notice that each little drop of water. Because sometimes we only see big things that happen. Oh, we cannot go out, and we focus on that. But what about other things that are happening each day, each breath we take? Every drop of water we have, um, every grain of rice we have. Like, what if we really notice the impact on us and really enjoy it? And so we can find that beauty in the impact on the smallest drop of water. That's what mindfulness also means, so that we don't, miss these wonderful, life-giving drops of water that's also dripping in our lives. So we look at it this way, we can start to notice the beauty of it. Like, how often do you look at a drop of water in slow motion like this? In other words, what are we sometimes not seeing and appreciating and being grateful for in our life? That's kind of just like the drop of water, right? Every time you turn on the tap, there's water. Of course, water is amazing, but because it's so easy to just turn on a tap and get a whole bunch of it, you don't realize that it's made of little drops of water. And we don't really learn to treasure each drop of water having a great impact when we drink it. Or the rice. Um, there is a Chinese saying, each grain of rice is important, right? So when when we eat a bowl of rice. But because it's a whole bowl, we just kind of, inhale it and the whole bowl of rice, and we don't treasure each rice. So think about each drop of water. What can each drop of water represent for you? It can be very impactful if we recognize and appreciate the impact. So what does that also mean? It means lots of things. It means that today, even if you take a walk, it can be helpful for your mental health and well-being. So it is not just talking to a harmful worker or taking medication or something. Sometimes just like right now, appreciating the sun outside and taking a walk. Sometimes it just starts by you committing to doing an action that helps you, and it can have a ripple effect on your life. It can start by eating good food or something, or really appreciating what you're eating. It can be going outside and breathing the fresh air that's kind of outside. So it can just start with one action. And what does it also mean? It also means that you can connect with just one person, and you can be the drop of water in someone else's life too. So if you say and call up someone who you haven't talked to for a while, sometimes all you need is one word and say, "How are you?" And that can be the ripple effect that other person needs to hear. So think about the little positive things that we can do in our lives and for other people. And so I want you to give you this idea of like a journal, right? So in other words, if you are doing a diary or writing in a journal in this book, what is written in chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 in the past cannot be changed because it's like written with a pen. So you cannot erase it. And even if that's the case, we can always turn over a new leaf. Be in this present moment and think about what you want to write today. So, because we are all writing our own life, right? So today, after listening to this talk, what can you do? What do you want to put down in today's pages, right? Sometimes we can get trapped by always looking back in chapter 3, chapter 2, like things that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and we might like say, oh, we lost that. We used to do that. We used to play mahjong every day, or we used to go having tai chi every day and cook at the harmful kitchen every day. So we might keep on saying, oh, when can we get back to that? You see, the trick is not going backwards because that's already in the past. Is the trick is kind of moving forwards. But of course, we don't want to skip 5 blank pages, right? And ruin this book. We have to write on today's page, right? 1 page at a time. Well, what do we want to do today? And that can be the memories of your future, right? And it can start with what drops of water you're going to enjoy and what drops of water can you be to another person. And that can be taking our life forward one day at a time, going forwards. And so we are a community, right? We are connected with other people. So it is true that one of the challenges in this pandemic is this loss of connection that we heard in the beginning. It is so important for us to reconnect with one another. And when we have lost activities because of social distancing, right? So you can see if we are these little pieces, maybe they are farther apart, but notice lines still connect them. We're still connected to one another. It doesn't matter how close or how far we are physically. there are still lines connecting us. Even if that person you don't see right in front of you, it doesn't mean that there's no line of connection. So our lines of connection are pretty much there naturally and forever, right? So even if that person is not right in front of you, it doesn't mean there's a disconnection. It's just a little bit farther away. There are still lines on the ground. And so we can reconnect with people we haven't seen for a while, that we can write to them, call them by phone or WhatsApp or WeChat, or use social media to connect with them. That's why we have these webinar events. If it was last year, I would be here in front of you in a classroom, and maybe less of you will come because you slept in and you didn't get there because the TTC wasn't running. But now all of you just turn on your computer and you're here, right? So there are still ways of connecting. It is finding that way of connection. And don't forget, we're still connected even if we can't do the exact same things. And even if I talked about acknowledging, yes, sometimes you might even have lost someone dear to you during this pandemic, sometimes because of COVID, and sometimes just because you might have lost someone who passed on and died from other causes. And I hear some people feel maybe extra sad, like if you lost, let's say, your great-grandfather in Korea or Vietnam, and you cannot fly back to attend the ceremony, you feel very bad. And sometimes we have those losses. And yet, don't forget that we're still connected with everyone else. And I think that's the important point. Even if that person, first of all, there are two things. If you've lost, let's say, a friend in Vietnam or somewhere far, maybe that particular friend cannot talk to you anymore. And so let's think about who else that you can talk to that can fill that role, fill that gap. Okay. So I think that's number one, because we are connected by other people. And it doesn't mean that you're finding someone to replace that person. It just means that maybe other people will help us in that way for us. So maybe this person serves, to as a friend to help you talk about the good old days. But maybe now someone else in your life can talk to you about the good old days in the past. Maybe this person used to sing karaoke with you. Now maybe another person will sing karaoke with you. Maybe this person used to pray with you about, go to the temple with you. Maybe now someone else will go to temple with you. Now, we're not talking about finding like a photocopy, like someone that replaced this person, because each person is not replaceable. It just means that we can reach out to different people to do those things again. Because sometimes I find that, because I lost contact with this person for whatever reason, well, I guess I can never go karaoke again. Maybe someone else can sing karaoke with you. So this is about reconnecting with other people who still can play that role. And then the other thing is that even though, again, that person you don't maybe even connect with on this earth, in this world, it doesn't mean you continue not to have a relationship of some kind with this person spiritually and emotionally, because this person is in your heart too. So if this connection and web is in the world, it's also in our hearts and in our minds. So if you lost like a loved one, that person is also forever connected in your heart. And you can also continue to develop a relationship with this person in your heart in different ways. If you believe in different religion, sometimes it means praying to the spirit of that person. And even if you don't believe in religion, you can think about how you honor the memory and what this person has given to you that's now part of you that you carry on. Maybe this person has taught you something in your life. Maybe this person has been a water droplet in your life. And part of that person's ideas and love and caring is now part of you. And maybe the person's values have given you meaning in certain deep way, and you can carry forth that person's values in this life. So whether it is praying to this person or talking to this person in your dreams, or honoring the memories and lessons you learn from this person, there may be a way that you can find of carrying forth your relationship with this person in your life, in your heart, and in your spirit. So this is about connections with others and also continuing the relationship with people whom we've lost, because there's a part of that in you too. And so there's this video clip that I also want to share. And yeah, type in what you see in this video clip. By the way, there's no end to this video clip. So if you're waiting for the end, it's not going to end. So just type in what you are seeing now. When you look at this picture, how do you feel? What do you notice? And what does it mean to you? So serene and calm, someone says. Great. So you can find a sense of calmness in this picture. There is movement, and yet it can also bring calmness. Wonderful. So someone talk about the liveliness and the stillness. You can see both. Peace. You can see peace. You can see life and peace and life. Yeah, so there's a sense of peace and calm, and we also see there's this very strong life force here, right? That the flower is alive. And you can see hope. Yeah, where do you see the hope? What is it about the picture that gives us hope? Yes, someone says, well, the hope comes from the light. So you can notice in this picture, there's life. And what gives us this life and hope? Well, there's this light coming from, the top. Is there anything else that gives us hope? There's certainly life and light that gives us hope. Is there anything else? There's beauty that emerged from dirty water. So that's great. So if you look at that water beneath it, of course, there's also mud, there's muddy, right? So just like Thich Nhat Hanh would say, no mud, no lotus, right? So the mud, the water, the mud underneath the water also brings us the beauty of the flower. So even though life is messy underneath the water surface, yes, we have to deal with messiness. There is the pandemic, there are things we've lost. Sometimes there's argument with family members even, right? And sometimes people make us angry. Sometimes we are suspicious. So all those kind of chaos and muddiness, well, in this mud can grow something that's very beautiful, because there's always light, there's always hope that helps, gives us, the light gives us this hope and this life. And of course, we don't need to forget the water. The water that we, do you know, do you remember the drops of water we spend looking at? We can also look at the water. You can see the water, the ripples, right? And you can even in this picture see the air, the little things that are like floating. So we are actually surrounded by things that gives us hope, things that are supporting us every day, people that are nice to us every day, and we're all connected. And so even in and all the mud, those muds and things that we've lost and challenges and stress, even with all of that, we can grow something that's beautiful if we are really opening ourselves up to really capture the light, to really look at the air and look at the movement of the water. So I hope that you're able to see the complete big picture. And so when we do that, and we really do see the complete big picture, and we will be able to open up. So this opening up is important, right? If we don't open ourselves up and we are hiding, if we're avoiding, then we don't see that light. So it means come out of hiding, right? Sometimes when people have lost things, and yes, we're told to socially distance, we can sometimes get depressed and feeling like there's irreversible changes, and we need to hide and we close up. So instead, what we can do is open ourselves up. So that's part of it. When we do open ourselves up to receiving light and hope and connect with others, that's going to help us bloom and thrive. And it becomes a positive cycle. Once we open ourselves up and start with a drop of water, the more a flower opens up, the more each petal will actually see the light. So sometimes it starts with a drop of water. It starts by going outside, of course, with a mask on and socially distanced. But it means that if we commit ourselves to, yes, we go out each day, you actually will experience more sunlight physically, but also emotionally. And sometimes it means just connecting with one person. And if we open ourselves up, even though, yes, maybe you had argument, with your mom, or maybe you had argument with your sister, or maybe you feel like your boyfriend is done something that anger you. And sometimes it comes with reopening up again, because even though we are afraid of getting hurt, if we can look into identifying our problems, naming how it affects us, and finding a way to reconnect again, it can be healing. So this is the healing process. And so this just brings us to this last slide I want to share with you, which is, yeah, when you see this last slide, what are you seeing this here? What does this mean to you? Not falling. Yes. Anything else? Have you seen one of this before? Have you ever seen this before? Always upright. Yeah. Well, if you haven't, um, it's kind of a toy you can buy. Yeah, resilience. So this is finally what we're talking about, which is the most important thing. When we are talking about coping with loss, what we're really talking about is to practice to develop a practice that can lead us to resilience. What does resilience means? Well, resilience means that we find a way that no matter what knocks us over, and yes, there are things that's going to come at us and try to knock us over, and that just occurs, right? Every day we have challenges. Right now it's the pandemic. Maybe before the pandemic, if we think back, there were probably other challenges too, right? And every day we may be experiencing stress. Someone can make us angry, and we might lose things, right? Because either to as time goes on, we may lose certain things, and things used to be a certain way, but things have changed. With the change of time, we may, with or without the pandemic, we may encounter losses, and in some ways, it's inevitable. Even if there's no pandemic in the world, we will have losses in our lives. And yet, as we saw in previous pictures, we can always reconnect. We can always find new things to connect with in the present moment, and we can find meaning. And that's this idea of this picture that I want you to keep in mind, is whatever has knocked you over, there are things that can also help you bounce back. And there are things will be okay. We need patience. We need to be able to connect with the present moment. We need to open ourselves up. We need to be willing to accept changes, reconfigure our connections, accept help from other people, start with little droplets in our lives that can have big impact. And if we do all of those things, what we can find is this idea of centeredness, of resilience, right? Things can knock us and we'll bounce back in the center. It always comes back to the center, right? Things would tip us one way back and we can come back to the center. It doesn't mean we'll stay in the center forever, because imagine that everything is still. That's not possible because time moves forward, right? And it would even be less lively if this picture doesn't move. So as life continues on, what gives this picture life is that we move forward, and when there's forward, there's always going to be challenges. If I ask you to, why don't you start exercising every day? You're going to say, wow, that's so hard. I haven't exercised for so long, and I have this knee pain also, and maybe I will fall, and maybe I'll be scared, and maybe when I walk outside, I'll come back and have some back pain too, and I'll be dizzy, right? So when we move, when we challenge ourselves, there are challenges, but we don't want to stay still. We actually want to meet up with those challenges. That's what gives us life. And when we're not afraid to meet the challenge, then there's this lively movement. It's not going to knock us down. So this picture means a number of things. It means that when there's a challenge and knock us, don't be afraid, because we're not gonna stay down. We're gonna bounce back up, just like these dolls. And the others want to be lively, right? What gives them life as we move forward? So instead of avoiding and running away from challenge, it actually means we can welcome and accept challenges. So if we start to do something, an exercise program, let's start by learning to cook more delicious foods. When I talk to a lot of patients, my happiest patients are patients who are starting to cook something different, maybe learn a new dish, or maybe sing a new song that they haven't sang for like 30 years, but they turn on that radio or YouTube and find an old Vietnamese song they haven't heard for like 20 years and start singing or dancing, just like this doll. And some clients say, I've never danced in my life. Well, they're like, we can try. You can start by moving to the music, just like these dolls. If the dolls can do it, you can do it too, right? So if you just sway with the movement. So as you're watching now at home, you may be just kind of very tired, but even if you just do a slight motion back and forth, back and forth. It doesn't even have to be a big movement. You're now burning calories. You're now exercising. Some people say, no, I never exercise. I'm like 70 years old. Well, look at this picture. Even if you just do this slight movement, that's all you need, right? So we welcome, do you remember that water drop? This is all it is. So life won't knock you over. And we can start by meeting these challenges. And again, all it needs is even just some slight movement. So I end in this image for you. So I hope that you'll be as lively as these dolls, whether you see yourself as you look like the top guy or the middle person or the bottom right, whichever you identify with. Whenever you feel stressed, think back to this picture. All you need is like slightly movement, side to side. Like tonight, before you yell at your husband or yell at your children, why haven't you done your homework yet? Why are you always on the screen? Before you yell, just stay a moment, allow yourself to wave side to side for a couple of moments to pass and see if you can calm down and notice that, this anger will pass, this frustration will pass, and we can find some sweetness in this moment too, and calmness. Okay, so with that, maybe I will stop the video share, and this may help us to have we have like, we're actually at time, but maybe we can have a few minutes for questions.